Hello and welcome. I want to talk to you about a little something called Dataverse. If you've been working with Power BI, really anything within the Power Platform, you probably are well aware of Dataverse itself. It's a very popular service that's available for us for storing data, there's pre-created tables that has information for us. We can create custom entities for us, custom tables that we can store information in. It's just a great relational storage engine, right? I had a call recently. I was recently on a virtual mentoring session with my good friend Steven, who was working with Dataverse, specifically in connecting with Power BI. But as we were going through it, that connection that's kind of pre-built, natively available in Power BI, wasn't really offering us a really useful experience. And it was using just a very standard entity table that's existed in Dataverse, and it was the system user table. This was just one table that was meant to work alongside of many others. We got together, we looked at the call, and we ended up finding an alternate route in finding a very effective solution for working with Dataverse. Some of you may have not had any issues ever working with Dataverse. A lot of times when you're connecting in with kind of just your custom tables that you've created, you're kind of controlling the columns in there, kind of leveraging the more simplistic data types of columns, you won't really run into issues. But today, that's what I want to talk to you about. Using that Dataverse connector, maybe some of the things you might run into, we are going to look at a very specific error message that was occurring for myself, for Steven himself, and how we worked around it. And I'll talk to you about these items, these issues, how you could potentially turn on this feature that I'm going to describe, which is called TDS, which at the end of the day, is really just letting us connect through a SQL endpoint. So for you out there who feel maybe a little more comfortable with SQL and you'd love to just write queries against your Dataverse tables, this is the video for you. So my name is Manuel Quintana with Pragmatic Works, and let's dive in and take a look at working with data from Dataverse, focus around the idea of using it within Power BI. I'm inside make.powerapps.com, right? We're just here so we can look at Dataverse. We're not going to do anything too crazy. The idea in the scenario which I'm going to mimic is, hey, you know what? I'm going to get a list of my users, right? And what teams they're a part of and what security roles they've been assigned. A pretty simple request. And this is to showcase us. We're just going to tap into some of the basic system tables that are available to us. We'll start by going in with Power BI, but then I'm going to illuminate some possible issues maybe that you've encountered, some obstacles that you might be running into. I'll show you, yes, ways to work around it. At the end of the day, there's a very common, tried and true solution with lots of resources out there. Even we have additional classes on our on-demand learning that you can tap into, take advantage of it. I do find it a little bit more straightforward using SQL to query my Dataverse tables. So let's first off describe the scenario, right? So I'm just here on the screen. We're just inside of Pragmatic Works' default Dataverse here. And there's tons of tables. If you've been working with Dataverse, you know that there are tons of tables. Some you'll never touch. Some are more system kind of back-end tables. These tables will actually come with a ton of columns, a lot of which you don't care about. And that's really going to introduce to us the first issue when using that Dataverse connector in Power BI. Let me illustrate. The first table that we want to tie into to get our answers is going to be our users table. But when we go down, all the way down to user, the main thing you need to be paying attention to if you haven't done this before is the name column. This is kind of, there's a display name and then there's the backend system name. When we work with something like Power BI, we're going to be leveraging the actual system names here. So we go down to the table that I know as user. We go here, there we go. And we can see the table is actually called system user. So we'll keep that in mind. And if you were to go in here and explore, there are a ton of columns in here. And one of the kind of benefits when working within Dataverse itself, and really I think a majority of the Power Platform, is that this does have quite a few very complex data types, right? You got polymorphic columns, we've got lookup columns. The nature of those lookup columns though can be one-to-one, one-to-many, or even many-to-many. And sometimes in those kind of more complex scenarios, it sometimes doesn't make it that easy to work with. When we're connecting through that Dataverse connector in Power BI, you might be well aware of this, right? You have these columns, they're actually packed columns that you can expand and explore. And sometimes it works out really nice. It basically, those one-to-many lookups kind of just let you bring in tables. So you just connect to one table and you can leverage these lookups to bring in columns from other tables. And that can be really nice. So there's some scenarios where those features work out seamlessly. They're fantastic. But sometimes it can be a little bit problematic with some of these complex types, as we're going to see here. There's a lot of columns inside of this, right? If we were to go here and hit our column section, this list just scrolls. And to be honest, I'm not even certain which one or which columns is going to cause the following issues, but you're going to see something right away. Let's go ahead and simply get connected to this instance of Dynamics. So what we're going to do is let's swing over to Power BI. Just going to bring that up. I have it ready for me in the background. And we're going to use the default Dataverse connector to go to this. All we need to basically do is log in with our user credentials. We do need to define the URL. If you would like to know the information about that, back over here, when you are in the environment that contains those Dataverse tables, a very simple thing you can do is just here in the settings wheel, you can go to the session details and you can find right here, the instance URL is right here. The instance URL for the most part is the same, except for this highlighted part here. This is going to be unique to you, right? Everybody is .crm.dynamics.com, but effectively this is my specific endpoint for this instance where my Dataverse tables reside. And we'll eventually go into it. That first piece, that unique named piece, is actually the name of the database itself. So there's kind of like a server and then the database, if you will, and it's right here. So let's go ahead and see how we can take advantage of this over, once again, Power BI. There is a nice Dataverse connector, not SQL Server Management Studios yet, but right here, there's a Dataverse connector. This draws our attention. So we go and we click on this. All it's going to do is say, okay, who are you? And we do a nice little single sign on. So it's probably going to pop up on my other screen. It did. It's just having me confirm my Entra ID, right? My Microsoft credentials for my organization. And it says you're signed in, you're good to go. And then what will happen next is it'll provide me an entire list of all the environments that I have access to, which in this case, we have a lot of people with their own environments. I have a little bit of elevated access. So it's quite the scrolling list. So right away, I'm not the most excited on this kind of display of Dataverse where it shows me everything. It'd be kind of nice to get the opportunity to just specify. Now I'm searching, which helps this out. And then I can, of course, expand this specific instance, the environment I'm interested in. That's the one here. But then I still got to scroll all the way down. Technically, I could probably, let's see if system user works for me. That might help out, right? It's not feeling as straightforward and as user-friendly as I would like, right? Sometimes that's just the case. And there's my table in question. So I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. Notice at no point in this process have we had the ability to choose our columns, right? This is going to be a problem. Your choice, whether you want to import or direct query, I'll just leave it's import. And we're going to see that this will run into a small issue. Let me grab my Power Creator. It kind of opened up on the other screen. But this is going to take a moment. And effectively, it's not going to necessarily time out. But this table in particular, as mentioned, has a ton of extra columns that are just system generated. And one or multiple of these is going to cause a problem here, effectively stopping me from working in this user interface-based experience. I'm not going to be able to move forward because there will be no table. I can't. You click on it. Now, granted, I'll show you there is a small little workaround that we can do that we can leverage this. And that would be just manually writing out some Power Query code. Right. So eventually, like I said, I guess I'll call it giving us an error and it's going to say, hey, the preview didn't work. There is a data type that just of the complexity won't allow this to be rendered. So we won't be able to do anything with this, right? But what we're going to do, and let's just kind of keep the example as straightforward as possible, is that I want to effectively just get the ID of the individual because system user is the first one. And that has a connection or a relationship over to the teams table. And it's on the user ID. Well, if we go down and explore, you're going to see that if we go down to username, once again, this is kind of where it gets more tricky. You got to find it. Here's my user. That's actually the user ID, right? So that's what I want. That's actually the unique identifier for the individual in this table. So I have to remember that. And there actually is a column called full name. If we go up, we can see that that is here. It's actually the primary name column and it is full name. So that's easy to remember. For me, I'm going to go back down to this user and remember this, because this is how I'm going to have to write this code. Once again, kind of feeding into this thing of, is it really that user friendly? Let's continue. So if we head back over to the Power Query Editor, we see it's come across that message I mentioned. And literally, we cannot continue. I can't remove columns, add columns. Because it doesn't give us this capability. Are we done here? Can we not move forward Power BI? No, you can. But the idea is you have to go into the advanced editor. And at this point, you need to add in your own steps. And once you've kind of finished this, then you can continue with Power BI however you see fit. So if I wanted those two columns, I'm simply going to go ahead and put a comma. I'm going to go to the next line of code, give a name to this step. I'm going to just call it selected columns, right? No spaces. If you want to put a space, you got to precursor it with a hashtag double quotes. So if you keep it no spaces, you can do it just like this. And we actually have to write out our own command here. And what we're going to be looking for is a command that's just simply called table.selectColumns. You can see it's right here. And the argument here is simply, there's effectively really just two arguments. What table do you want to pass through? And that is going to be the name of the previous step. So I can refer to DBO system user, I'm literally referencing this over here, comma, what columns would you like? And the way we can pass through multiple columns is going to be with a curly braces. So we're effectively sending an array of literal text strings. So if we remember, I don't actually, I need the system user ID. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. I have had some issues too with, Case sensitivity, basically, I've had issues where I actually do case sensitivity, camel case and capitals. If you keep everything lowercase, I haven't ever had any issues. So system user ID, and then comma, our next column, which is going to be, we found that to be full name. And then lastly, we have the closing curly brace. So final thing, we need to update our in statements, and let's hit done. So before, where there was no preview, was having problems because what it was doing is trying to bring everything from that table, something in there, either one or multiple columns, caused the problem. But by us manually going through and specifying what we're looking for, boom, we're in business. And at this point, since we actually have a table, we can use the interface. You can see we have a ton of like system accounts in here. I could label this down and say, hey, you know what? For text filters purposes, I don't want anything that contains a hashtag, which for us, just the way we have this set up, cleans this up to more traditional users, right? A very basic example, like I said, I decided to use one of these kind of system tables like everybody has, so that if you wanted to follow through with this, you could. But this obviously might not be the scenario that you're interested in. This concept, this idea is going to be prevalent and work across any potential tables in Dataverse if you run into certain issues like this. And to be honest, even if you don't get that preview error, on some of these tables where there's just a massive amount of columns, I usually find it quicker for this to load up if I actually go in and just put in the selected columns, right? If you're just sitting there and waiting, it could time out. You can do what I just did. Just add in your own table.select columns and choose what you want. Obviously, it's not that great if you need a lot of columns because you have to manually type out all of these things you're interested in, but it is there. It is an option. And this is just the first table. Using this method, I haven't tapped into any of those more complex columns that potentially have lookups that maybe I could use that cool quality of life extend feature that I talked about. Because in using this method, I basically would have to bring in the other 4 or 5 tables that I wanted and effectively then eventually merge them together to get my final result. Could I get this to work? Certainly. Absolutely. But is there something I think could work a little bit more seamless for you? I think so. And that's what I want to show you. So let's tuck Power BI away for a moment, right? For now, I'll just hit close and apply so we can get this away. And I'm just going to minimize this Power BI desktop. So now I'm going to say, well, how can I go in and maybe work with this a little bit more easily if I know SQL? Obviously, there's a little understanding here that if SQL is an area of knowledge, you don't have to be like extremely proficient, right? You're going to see very basic, simple SQL will be sufficient here. If I did a much easier interface to work with, you know how the tables relate. Once again, while this is going, if I return back to this actual table itself, the user table, there's a lot going on here, right? If we go to the very top and instead of looking at columns, I decide I want to go ahead and look at the relationships. I mean, there's a ton going on here. But I know already that my system user table is going to have a relationship over to the team membership table. And that membership table has a relationship over to the team table, which goes down the line and hits up finally what I want. Like at the end of the day, I said the query I'm going to do, you're going to see is going to traverse over, I think it's going to be like 5 different tables. And really just to bring back 3 columns. Some are just really for Brit. So it might not even be this complex. But we saw just with system user, the impact of that, right? So let's see how we can work around this. We know the endpoint already. This is something important. By default, this capability is turned on, but it may be that it has been manually turned off for that environment. Maybe IT has just limited that. So if it's not available for you, you may want to just check and see if that's an option. Let me show you the feature that I'm describing. You may not have access to this. I'm going to show you so you can have that conversation. When you are in the environment in question, technically not just right now, but we need to go to the admin center. And once in the admin center, you can choose your environment in question. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to go to the environments. I'm going to locate the environment in question for me that contains those tables. So this is a per environment feature. I'm going to select on this. You get all these little details on here. You can see we have all this fun stuff, access roles. This is where you can get information, right? There's that endpoint that we were talking about. This is where if you have the correct access, you can technically edit this. You can change the name if you wanted to. But when we're in here, we basically want to go to the features just at the top. All right, at the very top, there's the settings option. And we're going to be interested right here under products. So under products. So once again, I went to the environment question, hit settings at the top. Once you got to have admin access. And then under products, if you expand this, you'll find an option called features. So this specific feature, there's a lot in here, right, is going to be known as TDS. If we go over here on the right-hand side and scroll down a little bit, you can see it's a TDS endpoint. Enables connecting from Power BI using tabular data stream protocol. It's not just Power BI though. You can use this. We're going to use SQL Server Management Studio, but technically, if you wanted to, like the idea here, what I'm going to be showcasing basically is I could connect using SQL Server Management Studio, which I still think is a great way to explore the data. Once you've curated a SQL statement that you're interested in that brings you back everything you want, you can just copy and paste that over into a Power BI report that's using a SQL connections. And that's what we're going to do, right? You saw how kind of I had to work around the system user table. Well, when this is all said and done, you'll see how simple and easy I'll be able to bring this in. So mine is turned on. Notice there is an option here that if you want to turn it on, but then acquire elevated access where you have to give explicit permissions to users, that can be done as well. So this is all the administrative side. Once it's on, you have this capability of connecting to this through SSMS, through Power BI, and that's what we're going to be taking advantage of. I already have the environment in question that I'm interested in. Let me go back to that view. I want the production one here. This is my endpoint. So I'm literally just going to copy this address. Same thing we're going to do in Power BI. But now what I can do, and just in case so you're aware, the beginning portion here, see how this primary, remember that's the database name. I won't require it here, but I have seen it where sometimes you have to include this inside this connection. You're going to see that I won't need to, but just in case, I'll show you where you would go for this. So make a connection. It's like you're going to a database engine. You put in that very URL that we just specified. You can see that here. I can go forward with just this. You will want to choose your form of authentication. It's going to be some form of Microsoft Entra. We have multi-factor authentication, so I've chosen MFA, but you would just choose the respective one that is leveraged at your organization. MFA is usually pretty common here. And the thing in question here is connection properties. So for some reason, you just put in this URL, you provide your credentials as you should, and it doesn't connect. You may need to come over to connection properties and put that database name right here. So I technically don't have to. I could set this back to default, but notice I've just put the first part of my URL, Pragmatic Works, in my database name. So that could be something to be considering. But then I hit connect and I will have a pop-up saying, oh, you're trying to connect with Entra. So who are you trying to log in with? I provide the respective credentials. And then if we go back over here, we can see I am logged in. And here's my database. And it's a read-only example, right? So when you turn TDS on, even if you have elevated permissions, this is only going to be a read-only experience. So people can't come in here and run alter statements, delete things. They can't break things up. It's just read, which is nice. You can feel a little more comfy. But all my tables are here, right? And yes, it's an extensive list. And yes, these tables have massive columns. But you can just start to explore, right? Like for instance, we know the column names. So I could literally just go here and say, you know what? I'm just going to write a new query. And I can say, I'm just going to write a select statement. What's the table? We know our table was called system user. And we'll start, what did we have? System, we know it was full name. We'll just go with full name for now. I think it was full name and it was system user ID. I'm just guessing, we'll see. And we can go ahead and run this. And you can see how snappy and responsive that was. It just feels even quicker. I've got the information. If we wanted to do, we could throw in a where clause to filter that down, right? For all the different things we wanted to. But this is how quick and fast and easy we're working with this, right? And if we wanted to, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring kind of a finished query to show you the results. And you can imagine kind of the work and effort we would have had to do in Power BI for this. But I'm just going to that system user table. I'm joining it to team membership. I'm joining team membership to team, then to team roles, and then to security roles, just to get us this very simple list of our users. What is the user's name? What is the team name that they're a part of? And within that team, what is the security role they've been granted? I mean, now that we have this SQL statement, we've connected to it, we can just bring this over as is over to Power BI. So instead of using that Dataverse connector, we'll just use the SQL Server connector. So I'm just going to go ahead. Well, we'll wait to copy this over because we need to get that URL one more time. So I'm just going to go over to the Power Apps page where we're inside looking at our environment details. And I'm just going to copy the environment URL once again. This time when we go into Power BI, right? This is just where we were when we did the connection to Dataverse. We're not going to choose Dataverse. I'm going to choose SQL Server. And I'm going to put in that information. Now, just in case it does bring in a little bit of extra here, all you need is literally the core, just the actual server information, the server name. So get rid of the / at the end, get rid of the HTTP stuff. It should just be basically the domain name, .crm.dynamics.com. You may need to, actually not part of me, we will need to take that first part of it and put it in the database because if we were not to put a SQL statement in here, it actually would go to the next screen. It would look like SSMS where we get our list of tables. But at that point, we're kind of repeating the process where we'd click a table, it would load everything into Power Query, and then we'd have to eliminate records. The whole purpose here is we curated a query. We use SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio, to get the efficient query we're looking for. So all I need to do is go over, take this query as is, paste it right in here, which does require you to have a database, and connect this way. Normally, we'll just connect and choose. You'd have to go through the whole process of choosing your Microsoft account and getting connected. It looks like it remembered that for me. But here it is. I mean, it's going to be that simple and easy. If I want to transform this data, I just hit transform. If I want to load it, I can. But this now gives me exactly what I'm looking for, right? Obviously a very small, narrow example here, but I think you might be able to tell from the example we went through, it can be a little bit snappier, a bit more responsive. I think in some scenarios with custom tables inside Dataverse, Power BI, those can be useful. But some of these ones, like we're talking like 200, 300, 400 plus columns. I've seen tables with 500 plus columns. And if you can't choose your columns to start with, it can be a little bit messy. So hopefully that kind of sheds some light there, some additional options on how you can work with Dataverse itself. I think it's a very effective method. And like I mentioned in the beginning, right, this is something that was discovered in a virtual mentoring session that I had with a good friend now, we'll call him. And if you are unaware of that, definitely check that out, right? Our virtual mentoring services are for items like this. You're working towards something. You need some assistance. Myself and the rest of the team here, you hop on a call with a product specialist and we will assist with that, whether it's Power BI, whether it's something with Fabric, whether it's something with Power Apps. Come on in and we will assist working you through to help you understand that and hopefully improve that process. So you can always check out our virtual mentoring services right through our primary website. I hope you enjoyed. If you've got any cool stories about working with other sources, not using the traditional method of connecting, share it in the comments. Maybe that'll produce another video we can kind of walk through on those details. And I'll see you in the next one.